My good friend and our good friend, Jeenou, leader of this group, YLFK, is going to bring the views of young scholars, freedom fighters, and human rights defenders. They are the future, and we are paying very, very close attention to their work. As you will see, I don't mean to steal Jeenou's thunder, is going to MC the entire event. We have some very senior dignitaries who have sent messages to this gathering today. That is testament to the fact that we care, and everybody cares, and we understand the importance of nurturing this generation of bright young scholars. Thank you for joining us today, Jeenou. I'm going to turn it over to you at this point on.
Good morning, everyone, and good evening for those of you joining online from Korea. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very honored to be moderating and speaking at this event. First of all, let me introduce myself first. I'm Jeenou, a co-president of the Young Leader Forum of the Korean Peninsula, and also a Master of Science in Foreign Service student at Jerusalem University as well. So it is a great honor and pleasure to co-host North Korea Human Rights Moving Forward, the role of the young generation in South Korea and the US with HRNK. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to those who made this event possible, all the staff members of the HRNK and Young Leader Forum, and all staff as well. So this event is a part of the Youth Public Diplomacy Project by Ministry of Unification of the Republic of Korea. It is also meaningful because this is the first North Korean human rights seminar held in Washington, D.C. that was organized and led by young professionals. We hope it will be a meaningful time to discuss and share opinions on the perceptions and the roles of the young generation in South Korea and the US and future desired policy directions. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce my group in HRNK first, of course. So the Young Leader Forum of the Korean Peninsula, our forum is characterized by 40 young professionals from the Korean Peninsula ranging in age from 20 to 33. Generation of North Korean defectors and young professionals from South Korea to communicate and deliver the youth agenda on internal and external social issues on the Korean Peninsula, including North Korean human rights and unification. So we analyze our topics on social issues through our respective majors and field of interest, and we convert them into content such as op-eds, videos, or different presentations, and deliver them in a multi-faceted manner through various platforms and sites. So also, as many of you know, HRNK is a notable organization with a decade-long commitment to raise awareness of the North Korean human rights situations and publishing research that focuses on the world's attention on human rights abuses in the country. So it's a great pleasure to co-host with HRNK, and thank you so much. Before we get into discussion, we'd like to have a welcoming remark from Ambassador Shin-wha, Ambassador for International Cooperation on North Korean Human Rights at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, and also a professor at Korea University.
This is Shin-wha Lee, Ambassador of International Cooperation on North Korean Human Rights. Today, I'm delighted to congratulate the inaugural seminar on North Korean human rights for young professionals, especially since it is the first of its kind led by Korean and American youth professionals in the field of North Korea human rights, taking place in Washington, D.C. This is indeed a significant and noteworthy endeavor. The year 2023 is a significant year, not only for human rights in North Korea, but also for global human rights issues. We mark the 75th anniversary of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the 30th anniversary of the Vienna UN Human Rights Conference, the 20th anniversary of the European Union-led Resolution on North Korean Human Rights, the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the Commission of Inquiry, COI, and the 10th anniversary of the refugee law enactment in South Korea. Moreover, it is essential to focus on achieving a free and united Korean Peninsula, a vision underpinned by the principles highlighted during the Trilateral Summit among Korea, Japan, and US at the Camp David this past August. Paramount to this goal is ensuring that human rights and dignity remain at the forefront of our peace and security endeavors. In light of the current military crisis worldwide, including the conflict in Ukraine and between Israel and Palestine, where many civilians become victims and hostages of the conflict, there is an urgent need for international consensus on a comprehensive strategy that prioritizes human rights. Indeed, it is crucial to note the ongoing nuclear threats, missile provocation, and egregious human rights abuses in North Korea. The UN Security Council has recently emphasized the impact of human rights issues on nuclear and security crisis. However, due to the international community's fatigue regarding North Korea's long-standing nuclear and human rights situation amidst numerous global crises, North Korean human rights matter often goes unnoticed. As an ambassador, I wish to emphasize that North Korea's military threat and human rights abuses are very closely linked, akin to two sides of the same coin. While much of the global attention is directed towards denuclearization, emphasizing the nexus between nuclear consent and human rights can spotlight North Korea's human rights predicament. Recent reports by South Korean and American civil society organizations about radiation exposure risk in Punggye, Gilju County following North Korea's nuclear test, supported by satellite imagery and defectors accounts, serve as pertinent examples. Moreover, it is perplexing that North Korea, with human rights conditions arguably worse than those in Iran and any other countries, does not receive equivalent global attention. I highly welcome the awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize to imprisoned female activists in Iran, which signifies the recognition of those battling against repression and discrimination. In Iran, despite evident oppressions, one can directly observe the situation, which is totally impossible in North Korea, a nation shrouded in mystery, making its human rights situation all the more challenging. Unlike many authoritarian states, where the tyranny and civil society's battle can be relatively transparently observed, unfortunately, North Korea remains like a black box, providing a substantial hurdle for recognition, such as the Nobel Peace Prize. Against this backdrop, I'm so pleased that young experts from Korea and the US gathered to share their experience and insights on North Korean human rights, freedom, and unification issues. It is also encouraging that this seminar aims to discuss the depoliticization of North Korean human rights, enhance young awareness, and delve deep into the roles and policy directions of future young professionals from both countries. Finally, I earnestly hope that this pioneering seminar, led by young professionals like you, and the Korean and American arena of North Korean human rights, serves as a catalyst for devising tangible, innovative, and constructive action plan for the freedom and rights of the people in North Korea, particularly younger generation of the North Korea can get a big hope for this kind of activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Shin-wha. We'll now proceed to session 1 of the Young Leader from the Korean Peninsula. So we will present on the perceptions and public opinions and policy directions and desired policy directions of Korean youth on human rights in North Korea. I'll be presenting first, and the other panelists in Korea will be joining virtually and taking questions via the Zoom Q&A session. So let's get started. It is such a great pleasure to be first to present, actually. I'd like to talk about the current awareness of North Korean human rights among the young generation in Korea and policy issues and desired policy directions. South Korean youth, I think they are aware that the human rights situation in North Korea is pretty bad, but they do not know about the details about the current circumstances, and they're not interested in the specific perpetration as well. This is due to the politicization of North Korean human rights issues and the lack of education, and I think the platforms as well. So as I have experienced and observed through my work with the National Assembly and North Korean Human Rights NGOs previously, the implementation of the North Korean Human Rights Act has been subject to many ups and downs and depending on the administrations and political parties. Although there are aspects of the specificity of inter-Korean relations because the South Korea is a direct party to it, but it has been used as a tool for political fight for political conflicts rather than approaching it from the perspective of fundamental rights that protect and promote the universal rights of North Koreans, resulting in delays in consultation, solidarity, and ultimately the stigma of being the slowest to enact and implement the North Korean Human Rights Act in the world. So the direction and strategy of North Korean human rights policy has changed by each administration, leading to a loss of trust from the international community and unnecessary conflict domestically in South Korea. And moreover, I think youth exchange, especially education and information or networking platforms on North Korean human rights and overall in the field of North Korea and Korean Peninsula are also limited by just one-time academy or one-time just a public event, and that's all. So it is also true that the education on North Korean human rights is too often focused on just the dark side or depressing aspects of the past. So therefore, I'd like to suggest two desired policy directions. First, I'd like to talk about the depoliticization and sustainable North Korean human rights policy. I think it is critical that North Korean human rights should be viewed in light of international human rights norms. But the starting point should be the establishment of a sustainable and coherent human rights strategy for North Korea. However, I do agree that the depoliticizing North Korea's human rights is difficult and challenging at this point. And I recognize that we have a long way to go to actually depoliticize the human rights agenda in South Korea. So I think the one main thing is the international cooperation that I would like to mention first. So in order to establish a more sustainable and coherent policy, especially when it comes to international cooperation, I think some sort of the permanent North Korean Human Rights Council or governmental consultative body should be established and continue to lead the international discourse, and regardless of political party or administration, actually. We have experienced, and also the US has experienced a lot of ups and downs regarding the international cooperation of North Korean human rights. I think that hinges the actual international cooperation on it. So probably the other suggestion would be establishing a trilateral human rights consultative group if it's possible and feasible. Because after the trilateral summit at Camp David, I think there are three leaders agreed to strengthen their cooperation on North Korean human rights. So I think we need to develop a more sustainable dialogue channel between three countries and the world to maintain and then sustain the human rights policy for the international community. And also, in addition, I think a permanent dialogue and education platform centered on the young generation should be established to gradually reduce social conflicts caused by the politicization of North Korean human rights issues. I think the government should provide like foundation for social dialogue and conversation, just not a one-time academy or class format. I think we need to develop a more coherent platform that actually the young professionals can provide their opinions. So second is related to this point is I like to talk about the youth-oriented platform, education, networking, and awareness change platform and international exchange as well. So I think the new education on North Korean human rights centered on the young generation and ongoing social dialogue and policy cooperation centered on that would be a meaningful step forward, bridging the gap and social conflict or partisanship and increasing the interest of the younger generation in North Korean human rights issues. There are numbers of young professionals and college students, they are interested in this field, but they have a legal access to actual information to how to get in this field or the information overall. So it is also necessary to establish a platform for expanding international education by establishing establishing public-private partnership fellowships in the field of North Korea, and strengthening exchange with international young professionals. So, for instance, aspired young professionals from Korea can go abroad actually and expand its knowledge through the education or work experiences, and they can actually exchange their thoughts and their ideas with international young professionals from different countries. Therefore, I think it is necessary to create more opportunities for the young people who can actually speak out on this agenda, and especially promoting the international exchange on these issues to gradually depoliticize the issue, I think. So when these internal and external efforts are combined, a coherent and sustainable strategy for improving human rights in North Korea can be established. I agree that some may say it is difficult for a country to speak out due to its unique position as a party to inter-Korean relations. However, by taking the initiative to lead the international discourse on human rights in North Korea and demonstrating consistent and sustained efforts, I think we can also provide the future generations of North Korea, if reunification happens, that with a history and evidence of our government's or our country's commitment to improving human rights afterwards. So I like to say that South Korea should work harder to develop a more sustained and consistent strategy and provide a platform that young generation and young people professionals can exchange their thoughts and make more coherent social dialogues, and also establishing a permanent nonpartisan organization on international cooperation. It can be the governmental body, or it can be more dialogue channel between our coordination channel between trilateral or different multilateral countries. So I think with this effort, I think we can depoliticize and actually raise awareness of North Korean human rights issues in the future. I think we need to make a step forward. Thank you so much. And the next panelist is Junkyu Park, advisor and former president of the Young Leader Corps. And Mr. Park has been a young professional in the field of North Korea and has worked for many NGOs and government advisory organizations. So Junkyu Park will emphasize the role of the Korea and North Korean human rights field toward the PRK and the international society. However, due to the side effects of inter-Korean relations in South Korea, South Korea has been going through ups and downs in the North Korean human rights field related to the administration change in politics. So therefore, he will mention the new methods and reasons for breaking and going over the walls for the change of North Korean human rights in international society and the Korean Peninsula. We will watch his recorded remarks and we'll discuss. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Junkyu Park, the founder of Young Leader Forum of Korean Peninsula. First, it's an honor to be at the moment with all the friends who are trying hard to make the human rights situation in North Korea better. First, from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank Ambassador Lee, Mr. Scarlatoiu, and Damian, and all the other members here for the huge support in various ways for NKHR. Honestly speaking, as a Korean young generation, it has been a hard way gathering young generation and making a voice in Korean society to make an energy to improve North Korean human rights situation. As most of you all know, due to the Korean politics polarization, inside Korea, North Korean human rights issue has been isolated for a long time. Inter-Korean relationship and North Korean human rights issues has been on the very top of the pyramid of the polarization. Korean modern history and the politics cause people to be reluctant to the word human rights, and North Korean issue is not really on the mind of Korean society due to the economic and politics side effects. However, the most important point of NKHR issue to Koreans is that the issue is their own family problem that needs to be solved. And the importance of public opinion in democracy system is that the public's voice makes a massive difference in national Korean policies and Korea's international policies. Without public opinion, Korea had been making stance changes, not participating in UN resolutions and international sanctions, as government had their strong will about DPRK. We thought to make another step forward in North Korean human rights issues, we need a breaking point to prevent these circumstances repeating over and over again. First, we need a total different approach in raising awareness about North Korean human rights issue inside South Korea. Emphasizing what's happening in DPRK gathers no attention, and people even mention that people will walk away since they do not tend to hear sad stories due to the stress that the society gives to the people already. Second, we needed a specific solution and strategies, not only using the soft powers toward DPRK, we need to use soft powers to inside South Korea too. For example, people started noticing and started talking about North Korean human rights issues by watching Crash Landing on You, which is called 사랑의 불시착. It showed so many human rights issues of North Korea by showing the story. Not telling them directly how the human rights issue is in North. Through the different platforms and method, people started to perceive the human rights situation in North Korea and started paying attention. As the drama succeeded, people started visiting frontline observatories and started teaching their kids about the issues in North Korea. And as from the observatories, we can see North Korean people moving and farming. It is really important for people to actually see the side of North Korean and people inside to feel that the human rights situation is reality. Observatories is one of the most suitable space to tell the stories about human rights situation, as visitors can see it by their own sight, by their own eyes. However, there are only mentions mostly about Korean unification and no mentions about human rights situation in North Korea in frontline observatories. So in conclusion, the key point is to change the image in people's mind of North Korean human rights movement from the pieces of harsh images to humanistic storytelling and optimistic images to make people pay attention and make people feel that they can make a difference by participating themselves. Third, we need a physical spaces for North Korean human rights public awareness. We have been visiting all the observatories in South Korea regularly, and we found an interesting space called 4B DMZ. It's a cafe placed in Imjin Memorial Park for separated families. As you can see from the picture, the cafe is placed right next to the train tracks of Seoul to Sinuiju line. The train tracks near the fences is a symbol of inter-Korean relations. This cafe promoted themselves, the cafe most close to the front line, which made it a trend to take photo shots of coffees using a background of train tracks and the fences. People started uploading the pictures on their social media, such as Instagram. To conclude, we seem to need a perspective and image change in approaching and raising awareness in South Korea. We need platforms, different formats, different methods, and we need to have suitable physical spaces and trend-making strategy for the next 10 years of stepping forward and making a change in North Korean human rights. I see the hope and the future as our senior generations made a lot of change in South Korea and in international society, which affects North Korean human rights situation. Now, young generation is trying to be part of the movement to change the human race and inside North Korea. Lastly, I want to borrow the words from Michael Jackson. Let's heal the world and make it a better place. Thank you.
So our next panelist is Yukyeong Shim. She is a manager of external affairs at our young leader for the Korean Peninsula, and she is trying to mention that rather than basing on PD on the circumstance of North Korean human rights, people need to see North Korean people as an individual person, first like all of us. They're living life just like us in happiness, sadness, love, and sorrow, but has to show that in their life. The North Korean regime has taken away all the humanity elements. So Yukyeong speaks about rather than emphasizing the circumstances, we need to raise the awareness of specific rights such as children's education and women's rights as well. Therefore, through this meaningful session, Yukyeong wanted to deliver the message to the people of the Korean Peninsula, including both the South and North, by speaking the Korean at the end of the presentation a little bit, and I will translate it afterwards and the presentation. Thank you so much, and now Yukyeong is on.
Good evening. I'm Yukyeong Shim from Manager of External Affairs of Korea Peninsula Future Forum. The image of North Korean human rights in South Korea is very strict, serious, and dark. Young people don't want to talk about these negative issues. This is because it is difficult to recognize it as ours. North Korea human rights image change is very necessary. There is no need to portray North Korea human rights as a serious drama. I want to say that their lives do not need to be judged or pitied simply as good or bad. For them, it is just a daily routine of life filled with their own memories. However, of course, we need to clearly recognize human rights breach and discuss the current situation. North Korean human rights issues, known through testimonies, mainly concern adults. It seems that more attention is needed on the human rights of North Korean children. The current status of North Korean children's human rights will be reflected in the nature stories of North Korean defector children's daily lives and school life experiences. Children's human rights include the right to be protected, the right to be raised, and the right to education. Of course, the quality of rights varies depending on the family's economic environment and parents' temper. But I feel that there is a universal need to focus on the right of every child to receive a proper education. Education creates an individual world. The future of human rights in North Korea will change through the education of children. There are very clear limits to how we in the outside world can change the educational rights of children in North Korea. However, proper human rights education must be taught to children in South Korea and around the world from an early age at school. Much is already known about human rights of North Korea. Many people could figure out that the reality is dark and harsh. The future North Korea human rights awareness must be changed, and we should provide correct human rights education to children. I hope that North Korea human rights can be a topic of conversation without any hesitation, any pity, and education about human rights will be sufficiently provided for our future generation children. 지금부터 한국어로 몇 말씀 이어가겠습니다. 우리 모두는 가정의 경제 환경이나 부모의 상황에 구애받지 않고 어릴 적부터 교육을 차별 없이 동등하게 받아야 할 권리가 있다는 것을 잊지 말아야 합니다. 특히나 북한에 있는 아이들이 환경에 구애받고 학교를 제대로 가지 못하거나 교육을 제대로 받지 못해서 때를 놓치는 경우가 많은 것으로 알고 있기 때문에 이러한 점들이 개선될 필요성이 시급하다고 생각합니다.
In particular, children in North Korea often miss out because of their circumstances, lack of access to school, and lack of education, lack of information. So there is an urgent need to improve the situation, and Yukyeong like to urge a lot of Korean people in Korean Peninsula to pay more attention on children's and women's rights issues in North Korea as well, which is often missed out. So that's what Yukyeong said in Korean afterwards. So now we're taking a Q&A session. But before we take Q&A from the public and online, I do have one question for both of the panelists. How can the young generation make a total different approach in raising awareness of North Korean human rights? And what would be the other specific examples? And would you elaborate more on that? Because we have experienced some technical difficulties before, so I do apologize again. And would you elaborate more on that, please? Thank you.
Hello from Korea. Thank you very much again to Mr. Scarlatoiu and Jeenou and all the other members who are in Washington, D.C. trying to connect Korea and US for the North Korean human rights issue. I just got back from another young generation seminar, and we talked about how Korean history is twisted all the way to the present, and young generation is trying to untie those twists, but it's kind of hard to untie all the historical wounds that Korea had to go through last 100 years. And North Korean human rights issue is a part of it. Actually, it's really on the bottom of the wound that started the regime, Kim Il-sung regime to Kim Jong-un. And now South Korean students and other young generation is not trying to even pay attention to North Korean issue, and also due to a history, human rights issue is forbidden in the society since democratization and ideology conflicts are still going on in South Korea. However, as I mentioned in the presentation, the human rights issue is not really a complicated thing. It's what we do. We breathe, we eat, we see, we move, we hear, we love, we feel sadness. But in North Korea, it's not possible. So for Koreans, it's their own family issue. Their grandparents or their grandparents are in North Korea, and now their grandsons. It's their family. It's our family. So they should pay attention. But economic situation and all this political polarization is twisting all these fundamental issues. So what we are trying to do is to gather young generation who has this eager to make society pay attention to North Korean human rights issue. And what we are trying to do is to make the curve in showing North Korean human rights to the society. Rather than directly showing the situation of North Korean human rights, as I said, Crash Landing on You changed a lot about North Korean perspective from South Koreans. So what we should do is keep on telling stories, keep on telling stories of North Korean families, and we should keep on let them know that international society and other same human beings are caring about North Korean friends, families, and I think as we have instincts, they will someday know and have a power to resist, or they will have a power to make a change inside North Korea. Thank you.
Do you want to elaborate more, or I can just talk about the examples? But I don't like them. When the North Korean human rights report came out from the Ministry of Education last time, I think, of course, the general public, they're not really interested to read specifically the reports. But however, when a YouTuber with 2.8 million subscribers explained the content of North Korean human rights report using various examples like stories, I think it had a huge impact, actually. Generating 800,000 views in a week. I think that's pretty much, I've never seen this kind of like movement before. So I think we also tried it with a YouTuber with 800,000 subscribers, which is our member of a forum on whether the Korean Peninsula should be reunified. And this also reached 2,500,000 views overall. So I think we need to make, it's not about more like YouTuber or Instagram thing, but we need to make more soft approach to young people, to make more feasible and make more interest in it. I think that's pretty much important, because this can be the platform and they can actually expand their discussions and their thoughts and their knowledges regarding this. So when we actually try to make a video regarding whether the Korean Peninsula should be unified, there are a lot of like on the comments slide, there are a lot of discussions were going on from young people, whether it's yes or no questions, or how can we prepare if the reunification happens in sometimes in the future. So I think we need to make a total different approach to this. And I think young people, they are very capable to make different approaches, especially more soft approach through a social network or YouTube or different platforms in society. Yeah. And I'd like to take probably one question due to time, if it's possible in the public, or yeah, sure.
My name is Congratulatory. Thank you for this very important forum. I'd like to ask, how do you see the future of North Korean in terms of human rights? What's the future we see and how can we achieve the hope that we
So I think most of the people, they did not expect this kind of the long North Korean human rights abuses lasted for like decades from now on. I think there's pretty much a dark side of the future, but we can actually make a difference, because in the past, I think some sort of the international pressure mechanism actually worked on some very small topics, but actually worked some ways. And we need to get more international solidarity from the young professionals, that we make a difference from the raising awareness of the young professionals and young people in the whole country. I think that kind of like would contribute to the future of like the North Korean human rights overall situation, because I think I'm sure that North Korean regime, they do care a lot about the human rights circumstances. They do care about the international pressure, actually. So if we make a future step forward regarding taking a lot of different various approaches regarding this topic, and we can make a different pressure on it. We can make a different like social media, YouTube, or different kind of like the entertainment business, and we can make all differences in the future. So I do agree that it's kind of like challenging to predict the future of North Korean human rights, because there are a lot of North Korean people that are suffering right now from the North Korean government's abuses, but we can actually make more we can deepen the solidarity international society in the future. I hope that it's possible in the future. And do you want to elaborate more, Junkyu or Yukyeong?
I'm sorry, but can I speak in Korean to talking my opinion, and can you translate my? Thank you. 우선 젊은이들이 이 북한 인권 문제를 거부감 없이 느끼고 서로 소통하기 위해서는 제가 생각할 때 그 화제성을 높이기 위한 심각한 스토리가 아니라 그런 일상생활에 대한 이야기를 같이 나눌 수 있는 그런 좀 격이 없는 대화가 자연스럽게 이루어질 수 있을 때 가능하다고 생각합니다.
In order to make more social dialogue with young professionals and more exchanges with young professionals, I think the communication should be not more focused on more serious or dark side of the North Korean human rights to just catch the attention. I think we need to develop more like very pure daily like lives and like, you know, all kind of like different culture aspect or like life on daily basis. I think we can talk more about more direct communication or like more based on more different like aspect than just only the serious and darkness side of the North Korean human rights circumstances. We need to make it two tracks. And also add on that, I think the showing like very depressing situation in North Korean human rights circumstances, I think that's very crucial as well. But on the other side, we can have like two track different kind of policies. And we can also, from the young people, we can actually make more soft approach regarding this. And the other side, they can like the current organization, the different people, they can actually show different the dark side of the North Korean human rights circumstances. We can do both at the same time. I think that would be more helpful. Right. Due to the time, and thank you so much for Junkyu and Yukyeong for speaking out. And I think I do apologize again for some technical difficulties. And now we're going to proceed to session 2, which is HRNK session. We're going to hear from the US and global experts and young professionals in the field regarding the North Korean human rights issues. So our first speaker will be Mr. Scarlatoiu, Executive Director for HRNK, and he's a notable North Korean human rights expert. For decades, he has planned, coordinated, and conducted research and outreach programs aiming to focus world attention on human rights abuses in North Korea. So and he will talk about the human rights upfront strategy. And the floor is yours, and thank you so much for speaking. Thank you.
Well, Jeenou, let me thank you and your colleagues for your terrific speeches this morning. Human rights upfront approach. So for more than 30 years, the international community has been addressing only North Korea's hard political, security, military issues, basically nukes and missiles. Well, everyone has paid lip service to human rights. Human rights has often been sacrificed on the altar of political, security, military issues. So where did this get us? According to the RAND Corporation, by the year 2027, it's only 4 years from now, North Korea will be in possession of 200 nuclear warheads. That's a nuclear arsenal comparable to that of the United Kingdom or France. And mind you, they're no longer building nuclear weapons. North Korea is. So here's the question. If we've been doing the same thing, repeating it ad nauseum for more than 30 years since the end of the Cold War, isn't it time for a new approach? A human rights upfront approach. We don't mean to be unreasonable. Of course, the other issues are extraordinarily important. Nuclear weapons, missiles, lives are at stake. And yet, what is the center of gravity of the North Korean regime? Many of you, perhaps all of you, are students of international relations. You've read von Clausewitz on war, and you're familiar with the Schwerpunkt, the center of gravity. Kim Il-sung's regime survived without nuclear weapons, only with conventional capabilities. These are tools. But what's at the core of the regime is the coercion, surveillance, control, and punishment applied to the people of North Korea. Human rights violations are essential to executing the regime's top priority, top strategic objective, regime self-preservation. It's also important to remember that there's a very deep rift. I know that many of you have read original Korean language material, North Korean material. There is a very deep rift between the official ideology of North Korea, with Kim Il-sungism, Shim the 10 principles of monolithic ideology, Juche Sasan, Juche thought, and reality. The fact that North Korea is bound by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a UN member state. It has ratified the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the Women's Convention, the Children's Convention, the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. Together with a group of both human rights, I shouldn't be using the word experts, and security experts, we have put together a paper and a proposal for a human rights upfront approach. the members of the team. It's been a true honor to join them. Colonel David Maxwell, who's one of our board members, Dr. Nick Eberstadt, board member from the American Enterprise Institute, Bob Collins, author of multiple HRNK reports, Olivia Enos, formerly the Heritage Foundation, now the Hong Kong Human Rights Group, and of course, Ambassador Joseph Detrani, who was, mind you, the head of the US delegation to the six-party talks. Now, maybe the North Koreans will listen to me, or to Bob Collins, to Dave Maxwell, but when Joe Detrani was so focused on security issues while he led the delegation to the six-party talks, when Joe Detrani speaks in favor of a human rights upfront approach, they will listen. So what is human rights upfront? Initially, this was a concept used within the United Nations. As you know, there are three main branches of the UN: political, human rights, and humanitarian affairs. Of course, there are others, but as applied to North Korea. So what the human rights upfront of the UN means is, if you are executing a humanitarian project, you should read the report of the UN Commission of Inquiry that found almost 10 years ago that crimes against humanity are committed in North Korea. If you're working on a water and sanitation project, mind you, 3 clicks down the road, there is a Peninsula political prison camp or a Kyohaso re-education through labor camp. You should notice. You should ask for access to the camps. So the human rights upfront approach of the UN aims to bring together the political arm, the human security, the humanitarian arm, and the human rights arm. We have applied a broader and more liberal interpretation of human rights upfront, basically bring human rights closer to the other issues that have been addressed. Of course, decision makers, I mean, this goes back to our school days. Of course, you're much younger than I am. Now you do have classes in human rights during my college days or during my grad school. Not here, not in the USA, but in South Korea. We did not have one single class on human rights, yet about human rights. So this bias against human rights goes back to one's school days. Security experts appreciate the issue, but don't take it seriously. Human rights experts and advocates simply speak a different language. They do not know how to speak a language that could be understood by the security side. So here we go. Why? I mean, are you kidding me? Human rights, brush it aside. We're talking serious stuff, missiles, nukes. Well, there are 3 main arguments, in my view, that the two issues are closely interconnected. Number 1, what does the Kim Jong-un regime need in order to develop its nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, and in order to keep its elites happy? That's a question. Any takers? What do they need? Labor, very good. And what does labor produce? Yes, Laura, he knows. Yes, money. Yeah, so they need to procure funding. How do they do it? By oppressing and exploiting their own people at home and abroad. Prior to COVID, there were 100,000 North Koreans dispatched, officially dispatched, 해외 파견 근로자, right, to 40 countries all over the world. Up to 90% of their salaries were confiscated by the regime and most likely applied to the development of the nuclear and missile program. So connection number 1, forced labor, slave labor, terrible conditions of work to yield, to procure the funds needed for the development of these tools of death. Of course, then there is certainly another connection. There is, and perhaps very soon, as in Tuesday next week, Tuesday, October the 17th, 10 a.m. on Zoom, we are featuring a report that highlights the connection between a political prison camp and the Punggye-ri nuclear test site. Once again, Tuesday the 17th, 10 a.m. US Eastern. The report author, Jacob Vogler, will be presenting. Raymond is the discussant. The three of us co-authored, Raymond, Jacob, and myself. I'll moderate. And Ambassador Shin-wha, whom you just saw, is going to join us as well and give a statement. So there is another connection. What do we mean? What we mean is that we've come up with a strategy. We're in the process of reaching out to presidential candidates. We'll have a better picture soon. It will be very important to get on the agenda of presidential candidates early. It will be very important to get that singer, one line, two lines on Korean Peninsula issues. It's very important to get human rights and human rights up front in there. Jeenou, you mentioned Camp David. That was a terrific meeting. It produced terrific results. It produced a strategic approach to all important issues. It mentioned human rights. We do not yet have a coherent North Korean human rights strategy. Not in the United States, not in South Korea. However, under President Yonsei, the South Korean government has regained the high ground it once gave up. South Korea is very active in the UN, and based on what I know, South Korea was very active in putting this practically unprecedented summit together in Camp David. So we're very happy to see South Korea in a position of leadership. What we need is to resuscitate the coalition of like-minded UN member states, the Republic of Korea, us, the United States, Japan, the European Union, Canada, and others in an effort to focus on North Korean human rights. Of course, we do need information campaigns. I keep talking about the three stories. Tell the North Koreans the story of the corruption of their leadership, especially in the inner core of the Kim family, the story of their own human rights, which they don't understand, and also the story of the outside world, especially free, prosperous, democratic South Korea. Of course, we're not perfect. The United States or South Korea or Japan or the European Union, we are all democracies. Democracies acknowledge their faults and work on fixing problems. The only ones claiming to have a perfect human rights record are the North Koreans, the Venezuelans, the Cubans, the Russians, the Chinese, and the others. While working on improving our own imperfections and doing away with them, there is a real need for leadership that will focus on human rights as a key aspect of resolving the Korean Peninsula conundrum. Eventually, the ultimate solution to the Korean Peninsula conundrum, to crimes against humanity, egregious human rights violations, nukes, missiles, military provocations, hunger, human insecurity, the ultimate solution. We know it. Kenji Sawai is here, represents GPF, very big on unification. So the ultimate solution is unification of the Korean Peninsula under a free, democratic, prosperous Republic of Korea, close and staunch ally, friend, and partner of the United States of America. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Scarlatoiu, for a great speech. And now the next speaker will be Mr. Robert Collins, Senior Advisor of HRNK and former Chief of Strategy at the Iraq U.S. Combined Forces Command. So he will talk about the future of North Korean regime and Song system as well, and he will be joining via recorded remarks virtually. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak at this event. I'm honored that you had me be part of it. And I'm going to discuss the fragility of the Kim regime in North Korea, what it means for human rights, for the North Korean people, and other and the implications for other countries in terms of a model for how not to conduct human rights observation. First off, the Kim regime has several strengths and several weaknesses, and these are more extreme than ever before in the history of North Korea, both in concept of strengths and in the concept of weaknesses. Obviously, anybody that pays attention in North Korea realizes they have developed nuclear weapons, long-range missiles, and short range missiles. And this is a strength. These are extreme strengths of theirs, but have no impact or benefit to the average North Korean. Although the propaganda of the Kim regime will tell their own people that they are being protected, and it's for the defense of the country. The other strengths are the levels of control that the Kim regime places on their people, and essentially this control denies the human rights that are even described in the North Korea's constitution. However, the constitution is for the rest of the world to believe that somehow North Korea is in line with the international order. However, what really the documents that really run the country are ideologies that are put out by the Korean Workers' Party, of course, which Kim Jong-un is the leader of. These ideologies compel every North Korean to accept the leadership of North Korea and to obey the directives of the party and the supreme leader Kim Jong-un. The important aspect of this is that non-compliance is seen as a political threat to the regime, and therefore those that are found not to comply with these ideologies ends up being, in the short term, a very small violation would be go to a re-education camp. A medium level violation of these ideologies would result in several years imprisonment, and major violation, of course, would end up being placing one's self and one's family in a political prison camp, of which there's more than 120,000 people now living in those camps. Now, the ideologies that are most important to the regime are the 10 principles of monolithic ideology, which tells each and every North Korean how to act and what to believe, particularly in terms of their individual relationship with the supreme leader. And this came about in started in the late 60s, and Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un's father, instituted it in 1973 as mandatory. One of the more important aspects of this is that every weekend, every citizen must go through what is called a Shin-wha, which is a lifestyle self-critique, to say what they did wrong. They don't say anything about what they did right. They see what they did wrong, reference to Kim Il-sung, and they must be totally honest about it. Otherwise, they will be punished. And then when they finish their self-critique, then they have to turn to somebody else within their group, and these are all localized: workplace, living place, military, whatever the case might be, and they must criticize somebody else. And so everybody in the group has to do that. And once you're done criticizing, another person within the group gets up and criticizes you. All of this is designed to make sure that they put the handprint of dictatorship on each and every individual. Makes their lives to to obey anything that the Kim regime and the supreme leader tells them to do. Importantly, there are other areas of ideology that are very important, like the monolithic leadership system, the monolithic ideology system, which means only what Kim Jong-un says is acceptable in terms of ideology. Other forms of control, of course, is that it's a very heavy police state. Everybody is monitored. Individuals within the workplace or the school or the living area are recruited to report on other people. And this keeps them out of trouble, puts others in trouble. And so the competition between individuals within the same environment, work environment or living environment, the trust can't be developed between individuals, and it suppresses the ability of groups to complain. Now, the impact on human rights is that there are no human rights. They're only what the Kim regime permits them to do. Another form of control, I mean, this can get very extreme, but there's social classification that one must go through that the regime socially identifies with, and they have a loyal class, which is about 27% or so. They have a hostile class at the bottom, which is what 35%. Nobody is trusted, and then there is the wavering class in between. And being classified, you're 17 years old, you're classified by the local party committee as to what classification you are, and this impacts your opportunity, your housing, what food you get, where you can live, what you can do professionally, and this has a great impact on what you're getting. Obviously, the loyal class gets better housing, better opportunity. The hostile class gets none of that. They live poorer, and this is all very important for the regime to run, dominate the society. Now, having said that, there's parallels, quite frankly, to those that understand what apartheid is. There's not these parallels are based on two different systems. Of course, apartheid is a racial issue, and for North Korea, it is this classification issue. But the results of it are the same, and that's where the parallels come in. So, North Korea sees the removal of apartheid in South Africa as an example of why they have to continue to use their social classification system. And so it's very problematic. It is also important to understand that law does not have a place in North Korea. They use a front to say that they use law. They have courts, they have lawyers, have judges, but the lawyers defending an individual North Korean court is an advocate for the court, not an advocate for the victim or the person that's being tried, because of all the judges are and lawyers are appointed by the party, not by any institutional part of the government. So the threat on North Korean people is very great. With a number of combined weaknesses that are very compelling for obedience. And one last thing, the biggest weakness of North Korea is the lack of food. 40% of the population is malnutrition. Even in the military, they only get 2 meals a day. They get breakfast, they train in the morning, They don't get a meal at lunchtime. And so lately, a lot of units have had to have their soldiers just sleep in their barracks in the afternoon because they don't have any energy, and then they're fed at night. This makes a very, very weak military, although it's one of the fourth largest, it is the fourth largest military in the world. It is very weak because it is not fed. And this also goes for most of the individuals. And like I said, social classification issue comes in and dictates how much food you get. Obviously, the loyal class gets fed far better than the rest of the population. So these are some of the strengths and weaknesses that impact the human rights of the regime's strengths and weaknesses that impact the human rights of the North Korean people. And from there, I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Mr. Damian Reddy. He is a legal counsel and project development associate at HRNK from South Africa. He's also a debated attorney in South Africa as well. He will emphasize the role of the youth in endings of South Korea's apartheid, and it will be recorded remarks and floor is yours.
I want to thank the organizers for this event and also for giving me the opportunity of speaking. And I will be speaking about the crucial role of young people in South Africa's fight against apartheid. Also, thank you to Mr. Collins for highlighting the apartheid era in South Africa in his remarks. South Africa's apartheid regime, which lasted from 1948 to 1994, imposed a system of racial segregation, extreme oppression, and economic discrimination on people of color, in particular the majority Black population. During this period, young people played a pivotal role in challenging and dismantling apartheid, displaying immense courage, resilience, and determination. In the time allocated to me, I will simply discuss examples of the significant contributions made by young people in the struggle against apartheid. There are 5 main or important examples that I would like to mention, and then later on some lessons that we can learn. The first example is youth organizations. Young people were at the forefront of the struggle, forming various youth organizations that sought to challenge the apartheid regime. The most notable among these was the African National Congress Youth League, which was founded in 1944. The Youth League became an influential platform for young activists, providing them with leadership opportunities and enabling them to organize protests, rallies, and boycotts against apartheid policies. The Youth League played a pivotal role in cultivating anti-apartheid sentiments among young people and championing the cause both domestically and internationally. The second example of contributions given by young people is through student movements. Student movements in South Africa were instrumental in mobilizing young people against apartheid. The South African Students' Organization, also known as SASO, and the National Union of South African Students, NUSAS, were 2 prominent organizations that fought against apartheid policies. This was particular to academic institutions. These groups organized sit-ins, protests, and boycotts, shaping public opinion and exerting pressure on the apartheid government to address racial injustices, especially in academic setups. One of the most notable events during the apartheid era was the Soweto Uprising. This took place on June 16, 1976. This presented a significant turning point in the anti-apartheid struggle, highlighting the strong and resilient spirit of young South Africans. The protest, primarily led by students, erupted in response to the government's decree that Afrikaans, which is a language linked to colonialism, be used as the medium of instruction in schools instead of indigenous languages. Thousands of students took to the streets demanding quality education, in other words, equal education. This was because the quality of education during the apartheid era was based on skin color. The subsequent brutal crackdown by the police, resulting in numerous deaths and injuries, galvanized international support and further intensified the fight against apartheid. Another example that we can look at is through cultural and artistic expression. Young South Africans utilized artistic expression as a means of resistance against apartheid. Musicians, poets, writers, and visual artists played a significant role in shaping public perception and mobilizing resistance by highlighting the justices endured under apartheid. Musician Miriam Makeba, playwright Athol Fugard, poet Mongane Wali Serote, and artist Willie Bester are some of the few examples of young individuals who used their talents to challenge apartheid and to spread awareness about the human rights violations. The last example that we can look at is international solidarity and diplomacy. Young South Africans, both within the country and those who were exiled abroad, played a crucial role in garnering international support for the anti-apartheid movement. Student activists, exiled political leaders, and young diplomats in various countries tirelessly campaigned, engaged in protests, and lobbied foreign governments to impose sanctions against the apartheid government. Their efforts ultimately pressured the apartheid government to engage in negotiations and to seek a peaceful resolution. These are some of the examples and the role of young people in South Africa's struggle against apartheid. Their efforts cannot be underestimated. Their courage, their determination, and unwavering commitment to justice serve as an inspiration and provide the following valuable lessons that we can learn from today. The first lesson that we can take from youth activism in South Africa is passionate leadership and organization. This basically talks about how young activists in South Africa, some of the notable ones are Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko, Desmond Tutu, and many, many others. They demonstrated exceptional leadership skills. They mobilized and organized fellow students, activists, and communities, uniting them against the apartheid regime. Their passion and their dedication were contagious, propelling the movement forward and inspiring others to join the struggle for equality. Another lesson that we can take is grassroots movements matter. The youth activism against apartheid largely originated from grassroots movements. As mentioned before, students and young people organized boycotts, protests, sit-ins, and other acts of civil disobedience to challenge the oppressive system in South Africa. These grassroots efforts enabled a decentralized and widespread resistance, gaining different sections of society's support and drawing attention to the cause internationally. Sacrifice and resilience is another lesson. South African youth activists faced many severe consequences for their resistance. Many endured arrests, incarceration, torture, and even the loss of life. Despite the grave risks involved, they remained resilient, refusing to back down or compromise their principles. Their unwavering commitment and resilience are inspirations for individuals fighting for justice and freedom worldwide. International solidarity is another lesson. As mentioned before, the apartheid movement gained significant support and solidarity from the international community. This international involvement helped to expose the injustices committed under the apartheid regime and to put pressure on the South African government. Youth activists effectively utilized international platforms to raise awareness, to garner support, and to build alliances showcasing the importance of global solidarity in addressing human rights violations. Another lesson, intersectionality and inclusivity. South African young activism recognized the importance of intersectionality in their struggle against apartheid. They actively worked towards inclusivity, crossing racial, cultural, and societal divides. The movement recognized that unity among different groups of people was essential to dismantle the system of apartheid. This understanding highlights the power of diverse voices coming together to combat systematic and systemic oppression. Another lesson is education and awareness. Youth activists understood the significance of education and awareness in their fight for justice in South Africa. They organized educational initiatives, community workshops, and utilized various mediums like music, and art and literature to spread awareness about apartheid's consequences. Their efforts in educating the masses and dispelling propaganda ensured that the movement gained widespread support, both nationally and globally. The last lesson that we can take from youth activism in South Africa is having a long-term vision. The South African youth activists fought not only to end apartheid, but to also establish a just, inclusive, and democratic society. They envisioned a future where every individual enjoyed equal rights and opportunities, irrespective of race or ethnicity. Having this long-term vision highlights the importance of having a clear objective and working towards sustainable change. In closing, the youth of South Africa played an indispensable role in the struggle against apartheid. Their unwavering determination, leadership, and sacrifice were instrumental in dismantling the oppressive regime. The world can learn from the youth activism against apartheid in South Africa by recognizing the transformative potential of activism. Young people effectively challenged the apartheid system and eventually paved the way for a democratic and inclusive South Africa. Their contributions remain a testament to the power of youth in effecting transformative change. These lessons can be adopted by many fights for human rights around the world today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Reddy. So next speaker will be Mr. Raymond, the Director of Operation and Research at HRNK. He has participated in editorial work on a lot of different various HRNK publications, and he's a very young professional in the US, so he can talk about the role of the youth in raising awareness of North Korean human rights more globally in the US as well. Thank you, and Raymond, the floor is yours.
Everyone, it's a pleasure to be able to speak today. I want to thank Damian and Jeenou for the months of hard work and putting this event together. And I just want to, in the interest of time, briefly share some reflections that I've had on the relatively short time that I've spent as a staff member at the US-based North Korean Human Rights Organization. I want to make 3 points. The first point is that I think the long-term conditions in our favor, and what I mean by this specifically is that there's growing global interest in South Korea. There's growing interest in Korea issues, both in the US and across the world. I see that in part, I haven't done an analysis per se, but just anecdotally, even around 10 years ago, the intern team that we had the privilege of working with here at HRNK were mostly South Korean citizens or people with family ties to South Korea, and that was somewhat to be expected given the nature of the issue. But if you look at our team now, we'll still have people from South Korea, you still have ethnic Koreans, but I think you see a more wide range of individuals volunteering their time and effort to participate in our work. And I think that's a sign that there is a more diverse sources of interest in Korea issues, and that in turn will lead to more diverse sources of interest, I think, in the long run, in North Korea issues as well. And I think the demand will be there for this information in the years to come. And I think that those of us who are actively engaged in this field have a responsibility to put out carefully researched and documented information to the best of our ability, even if we face certain limitations with having on-the-ground access. The second point I want to make is that it's important to be mindful of the domestic political landscape in South Korea and the US, some of which the previous speakers have addressed. But I think it's also important to recognize that public opinion is not an immutable thing in the long run. Again, to state the obvious, North Korean human rights is fundamentally a non-political issue. Closing political prison camps, making sure the humanitarian aid gets to the most vulnerable people, dismantling the Jung-Hoon system of discrimination, releasing abductees, reunions for separated families. These are not fundamentally partisan issues. We can have disagreements, and there should be disagreements and debates in South Korea and in the United States about how to approach North Korea. Both are democratic countries. It's only natural that we have this debate. But I would respectfully submit to everyone here that it is untenable to completely ignore serious concerns about the full range of human rights issues in North Korea. As Justice Michael Kirby said after the release of the TOI report, now almost 10 years ago in 2014, we can no longer claim that we did not know what was happening. Information is out. But of course, we should be mindful of the ways in which the issue can be politicized and to guard against those tendencies in our own work. We should also be aware of the broader political context, and this is important because it enables us to effectively identify opportunities and think of strategies for how to convey this issue to a wider audience. Now, history tells us that public opinion can change over a matter of 1 or 2 or 3 decades. I think the important thing is to keep consistently putting out carefully researched, documented information about the situation. I think if we take an explicitly nonpartisan stance and keep sending out this information, we can help encourage, hopefully, a shift in public opinion over the long term as well. And in closing, the third point I want to make is perhaps think about the reason we're here today. Why do we talk about raising awareness? I want to say it's not just for its own sake. This is not an abstract exercise in intellectual curiosity. Something I want to stress is that, and this is true even now, but when there is change in North Korea, however and whenever it occurs, there will be a greater need for people outside who already have some basis to understand what the North Korean people have experienced for decades. And this applies not just to policymakers and practitioners narrowly defined, but people engaged in every field of human endeavor you can imagine: education, art, science, business, sports, whatever field you might be able to imagine. We will need people who understand what is happening. In other words, we need people who can empathize with the North Korean people, fully recognize and respect their dignity as fellow human beings, listen attentively to their needs and aspirations, and think about how best to empower and assist them with the resources, talents, and interests that we have. We need people who can advocate on the North Korean people's behalf, both in daily conversations to family and friends, and also to their elected representatives who can influence policy. In this sense, I would say it is never too early to start raising awareness, and we need to keep at it. There's a lot of work ahead of us, and based on this event today, I'm glad to know that we will be able to work together as friends, partners, and colleagues as we look towards the future to make sure that the North Korean people are not ignored. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a great speech. We supposed to take the questions, but we are short of time, so I think we'll proceed to section 3, and then if we have a time, then we can take 1 or 2 questions there. So in session 3, the ambassador and Dr. Jung-Hoon, who served as a South Korean government's inaugural ambassador for international cooperation on North Korean human rights. He will discuss the role of the future of the youth as an expert on North Korean human rights, and he will like to talk about the policy direction and desired policy options for the future. And he will on videos, remarkable videos. So thanks so much for speech, Ambassador Jung-Hoon.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jung-Hoon Lee. I'm the Dean of the Graduate School of International Studies at Yonsei University. I am formerly the inaugural ambassador for North Korean human rights. And it's been almost a decade since I've assumed that position and have since been on the campaign to hope that there will be progress in the North Korean human rights front. I'm grateful that I'm invited to this very timely conference organized by the young professionals of both the Republic of Korea as well as the United States. I congratulate the HRNK and the 청년미래 Forum for the 한반도 청년미래 Forum for making the initiative to host something like this, because usually when we have a conference on North Korean human rights. It's a lot of elderly people showing up, and you can almost count with one hand young people participating in those conferences. So it's a great transition, and it's a great initiative that you're taking to get a lot of the young people involved, and it's very important because unfortunately we're in this for a long haul. This is not going to get resolved anytime soon. So you may be young now, but unfortunately, by the time we actually see some genuine progress, you may no longer be young anymore. So I think it's very important that at this stage that you understand exactly what the human rights violations are in North Korea, and try to grope for ways to make a difference, move the needle one by one. It's not going to happen, all of a sudden. But if we're able to dent into to the issues, whether it's the North Korean defectors in China, whether it's the public execution, whether it's the political prison camps, the gulags, whether it's to do with the famine and young kids, women's rights being, violated left and right, whatever the specific issue of North Korean human rights might be, there has to be ways to deal with those. There has to be ways to make a difference, improve things. And I hope that, you start early to delve into these questions and try to solve these problems early on, so that in time, year, 5 years, 10 years down the line, you will have the experience and you will have the knowledge to be able to make the right decisions and right calls, to make the right moves, so that things could improve in North Korea. It's been 10 years almost since the advent of the publication of the COI report and the famous recommendations that the COI made in order to make progress in North Korean human rights. Unfortunately, as I said, things are basically held in abeyance. Things are stalled in 10 years. Unfortunately, I've been saying a lot of the things that I'm still saying 10 years ago, and not much has changed. So raising awareness is great, and we have to continue to raise awareness, no doubt about that. And it's the right thing to do. That said, it's not sufficient. Raising awareness alone is not sufficient, because if we simply raise awareness and raise issue, then in 5 years, 10 years down the line, we may be saying the same thing without any improvement. Time is really of essence, and time is now to take very specific actions. Okay, how do we take specific actions? And I've been saying this a lot, that we should really make the effort to pressure the refugee agency, the UN refugee agency, so that they would have access to the North Korean defectors and basically be able to determine whether they qualify as refugees or not. I mean, that's what the UN refugee agency does. That's their job, but they're not doing it. And what are we doing about it? Are we saying anything about it? No, we're not. And we should. That's what I'm saying. So it's not just on Beijing and Pyongyang. Of course, that's the source of all the problems. But still, you have the United Nations and you have the UN presence in China, in the form of the UN Refugee Agency, which is simply not doing its job. So let's get at it, and let's raise question marks and pressure the agency, the United Nations, to do more, to do its job. Why is North Korea that violates every single article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that violates the Non-Proliferation Treaty? How does a country like that function as if nothing has happened in the UN? How does a country like that assume chairmanship of the Disarmament Conference, which is a very important conference in the UN because it's an organization that gave birth to the NPT? Something's wrong, and something has to change. The UN has to change. There has to be penalty for member states, UN member states, that violates the principles and rules of the UN Charter. And North Korea violates pretty much everything, more so than any other country. And it should be penalized. And it's not being so. And therefore, young professionals like yourselves should raise this issue to the UN, to your government, to the US government, to South Korean government, to the Japanese government, Canadian government, whoever it may be, to make sure that something happens, that North Korea is not permitted to function as normal, as if nothing has happened in a major international organization such as the United Nations. Look at South Africa. Back in 1974, because of the apartheid system, South Africa was suspended of its credentials at the General Assembly for 20 years. 20 years. South Africa was not able to function properly, join, committees or subcommittees. What is the result? After 20 years, Nelson Mandela becomes the president of South Africa, and the apartheid system, institutionalization of racism, is abolished. And that's the kind of resolve and political will necessary to make a change in North Korea. Unfortunately, that's not been the case so far, and I hope that people like yourself, young people, raise this issue and make this happen so that, as did in South Africa, there could be some changes in North Korea as well. So again, I congratulate you all for such a wonderful conference and the gathering. And I hope that after this, that you come up with a lot of great new ideas to send information to North Korea, technology, new technologies, whether it's drones or whatever it may be. I hope you can find ways to help more defectors in China. Whatever it may be, whatever it takes, I hope you can come up with new ideas that can be implemented. And I look forward to hearing them. So thank you. Good luck.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador Lee. I think there was the last speaker of our event. And for short of time, I think, should we have a time over take one question if possible? Yeah. And in the audience, or for those of you joining online, if you have questions, you can take one question and we're going to get a closing remarks. So there's one question online. It says, however, the steps we have taken so far seem to be insufficient to engage your interest. In the opinion of the experts, what do you think will be an effective way to approach young people in Korea? And what are we missing? Why is that the same approach to events and same topic in other countries as it seems to work? I think the important thing is the effective way. I think the perspective is different, but I think this is important. I think as we rapidly mentioned that we need to develop more self-approach, actually, that we can raise awareness by regarding a lot of issues regarding like information technology and like the access to information of North Koreans or forceful repatriation of North Korean defectors from China to North Korea. I think that's all kind of these issues. We can raise it through the soft approach. I think we can make the videos, we can make the other options, we can do presentations. We can actually talk this through the social dialogue with different young professionals, that we can make differences in the future, because it's pretty much challenging. It's almost impossible at this point, I believe. So we need to change more a systemic reformation regarding this all kind of international mechanisms and also domestic mechanism to make a change, I guess. Thank you. So due to the short of time, we have a lot to say, but thank you to everyone who attended this event in person and virtually in Korea. It's almost 12:30 a.m. Korea, so I do appreciate that. And I hope that this first Youth North Korean Human Rights Seminar in Washington will serve as a cornerstone for future exchanges among the young professional in the field of North Korean human rights. Because last time when we had our forum had the first international youth forum in Korea on enforced disappearance by North Korea with the Citizens Alliance of North Korean Human Rights at Ewha Women's University, and I think that was pretty successful. It was the first time that the all audience, like 90% of the audience, were actually college students or the graduate students in Korea. That was the first time I've ever seen in kind of the North Korean Human Rights Seminar in Korea. So that was a pretty much a positive impact. So I also hope that this kind of the young professional in the field of North Korean human rights, they can actually gather more often and exchange ideas to depoliticize or raise the awareness of North Korean human rights and envision a future for freedom and universal human rights for North Koreans. Once again, I like to this will be like small step forward. I like to see more about gatherings starting from this point in the future. So I like to thank HRNK, especially Damian and Mr. Scarlatoiu, Raymond, and Lauren, everyone who put this lot of effort in this kind of like technical difficulties and all over the work for, I think it has been 6 months, so we had a lot of work to do. And also the staff of the Korean Peninsula, the young leader from the Korean Peninsula, like Junkyu, Yukyeong, and all other members who supported this event. And also thank Ministry of Unification for the support to Youth Public Diplomacy Project. It's the first time it's being held in Washington, D.C., so I do thank them. And also the ambassadors and experts who spoke at the event for their hard work in preparing to organize this event. So thank you so much for coming, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much.